The clock read 10:18 p.m. when the door opened, and Lucas Bennett's entire life changed direction. But this wasn't the woman from the dating app photos. This wasn't the nervous real estate agent who was supposed to show up an hour ago. This was someone else entirely, someone who would turn a failed blind date into the most important meeting of his life. What happened next? Nobody could have predicted it. Not Lucas. Not the woman who stood before him in that dimly lit restaurant. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The frost hadn't fully melted from the windshield when Lucas Bennett made his decision. He could leave. He could start the engine, pull out of this half-empty parking lot, and drive the 20 minutes back to his rental house, where his daughter Emma was probably still awake, tucked under her grandmother's supervision, waiting to hear how Daddy's special dinner went. She'd ask questions with those bright, hopeful eyes, the same eyes her mother had before everything fell apart. And Lucas would have to explain once again that sometimes grown-ups make plans that don't work out. But that's not what he did. Instead, Lucas turned off the ignition, grabbed the folded drawing from the passenger seat, two stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun, "Good luck, Dad," written in purple marker, and stepped into the February cold. The restaurant was called Marea Verde. It sat on a corner lot in the Arts District, the kind of place that attracted young professionals and couples celebrating anniversaries. String lights glowed against exposed brick walls inside. Through the large front windows, Lucas could see tables filled with people leaning into conversation, wine glasses catching candlelight, the warm hum of Friday night possibility. He didn't belong here, not really. Not anymore. 3 years ago, maybe. Back when he and Jennifer were still trying, still pretending that counseling sessions and date nights could repair what had quietly shattered between them. Back when his design career was thriving at a major firm downtown, before the layoffs, before the freelance scramble, before late nights at the kitchen table building logos for local businesses while his kids slept in the next room. But tonight, he'd promised himself he'd try. His sister had set the whole thing up. "Her name's Rachel," Melissa had said over coffee last week, sliding her phone across the table to show him the profile. "She's a real estate agent, loves hiking, reads actual books, volunteers at the animal shelter." And Lucas, she'd given him that look, the one that said, "I'm your older sister and I know what you need better than you do." She's been single for 2 years. She gets it. Gets what? Lucas had wanted to ask. Gets that I haven't slept more than 5 hours a night since the divorce? Gets that my son still cries sometimes when he thinks I can't hear him? Gets that I measure my life now in school pickup times and grocery budgets and the particular weight of loneliness that settles in after bedtime stories? But he'd agreed anyway. Because Melissa meant well. Because Emma had drawn that picture and slipped it onto his seat this morning with a whispered, "You deserve to be happy, Daddy." Because some part of him, buried deep but still breathing, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still space in his life for something other than survival. The hostess greeted him with a practiced smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Bennett, 9 o'clock, table for 2. She checked her tablet, then gestured toward the dining room. "Right this way." Lucas followed her through the maze of tables, acutely aware of how he must look. Button-down shirt he'd ironed himself, dark jeans, the one pair of dress shoes that still fit properly. He'd even trimmed his beard, though Emma had giggled and said it made him look fancy weird. The hostess stopped at a table near the window, perfect view of the street. "Your server will be right with you. Can I start you with anything to drink?" "Just water for now, thanks." She nodded and disappeared, leaving Lucas alone with the empty chair across from him. 9 o'clock came and went. Lucas checked his phone. No messages. He pulled up the text thread with Rachel. Their conversation had been brief but pleasant. She'd suggested Marea Verde, said she knew the owner, promised she'd be there at 9 sharp. He'd responded with a simple looking forward to it, because what else do you say to someone you've never met but might potentially kiss goodnight in a few hours? The thought made his stomach tighten. A server appeared, young guy, probably mid-20s, with the kind of effortless energy Lucas vaguely remembered having once. "Good evening, sir. My name's David. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Are we waiting for someone?" "Yeah, she should be here soon." "No problem. Can I get you started with something while you wait? We have a great selection of craft cocktails, or if you prefer wine. Water's fine." David's smile didn't waver. "You got it." 9:15. Lucas watched couples at nearby tables. A pair to his left were clearly on a first date too, the woman laughing a bit too loudly at something the man said, both of them performing their best selves. To his right, an older couple ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from decades together, from knowing someone so well that words become optional. He wondered which one he was supposed to want. 9:25. Still nothing. Lucas sent a text. "Hey, I'm here at Maria Verde, everything okay?" The message showed as delivered but not read. David returned with water. "Still waiting?" "Looks like it." "No worries, take your time." But there was something in his tone, sympathy maybe, or pity. Lucas couldn't tell which was worse. 9:40. The breadbasket David had quietly left was now half empty. Lucas had eaten 3 pieces without tasting them, each one a small surrender to the growing certainty settling in his chest. She wasn't coming. He should have expected this, should have known better. In what universe does a single father with 2 kids, a struggling freelance career, and emotional baggage you could fill a storage unit with actually get a happy ending? Life doesn't work that way. Not for people like him. But here's the thing about Lucas Bennett that most people didn't understand. He'd learned, through years of single parenthood and quiet perseverance, that the worst thing you can do when life disappoints you is make it worse by acting out. His kids needed stability. They needed a father who didn't fall apart when things went sideways. They needed someone who could sit at a restaurant table alone and stood up and still maintain his dignity. So when David approached again at 9:50, Lucas didn't make a scene. "I think I'll order," he said calmly. David blinked. "Oh, is she?" "I'm hungry," Lucas said simply. "Can I get the pappardelle with wild mushrooms?" "Of course, absolutely." David scribbled on his pad, clearly uncertain how to navigate this. "And would you like just the pasta? Thanks." The food arrived at 10:05. It looked beautiful. Wide ribbons of fresh pasta swimming in herb-flecked butter, earthy mushrooms, shaved parmesan on top. Lucas ate slowly, methodically, refusing to rush through it like some pathetic guy who couldn't handle being alone in public. Because he wasn't pathetic. He was a father, a designer, a man who'd survived a divorce that nearly broke him, who'd learned to braid his daughter's hair and help with algebra homework and show up for every single thing that mattered, even when he was exhausted, even when it hurt. If Rachel had changed her mind, fine. If she'd gotten scared or found someone better or simply forgot, that was her choice. He wouldn't let it diminish him. The restaurant had started to empty out. The couple on the first date was gone. The older pair was settling their bill. David kept his distance, letting Lucas eat in peace. 10:18. Lucas had just forked the last bite of pasta when the front door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain that had just started to fall. And with it came a woman. But not the woman from the photos. Not Rachel. This woman was older, mid-40s, Lucas guessed, with dark hair pulled into an elegant knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a tailored charcoal coat that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly rent, and heels that clicked with quiet authority against the tile floor. Everything about her suggested precision, control, success. She paused just inside the entrance, scanning the dining room with the kind of assessment that comes from someone used to evaluating spaces, people, opportunities. Her gaze moved across the restaurant methodically, missing nothing. And then it landed on Lucas. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the distance. Lucas felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction exactly, not yet, but recognition of some kind. Like when you hear a piece of music and know, even before the lyrics start, that it's going to matter. The woman moved, not toward the hostess stand, not to another table. She walked directly toward Lucas with the kind of certainty that suggested she'd already made a decision and saw no point in second-guessing it. Lucas set down his fork. She stopped at his table, one hand resting lightly on the back of the empty chair. Up close, she was striking, sharp cheekbones, gray eyes that held intelligence and something else Lucas couldn't quite name. Not kindness exactly, more like fairness. "You're Lucas Bennett," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," he managed. His voice came out rougher than intended. "I am. I'm Evelyn Hart." She slid into the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation, shrugging off her coat to reveal a simple black blouse. CEO of Hart and Vale Development. Lucas stared. The name clicked into place immediately. You couldn't work in design in this city without knowing about Hart and Vale. They were behind half the major commercial developments in the past decade. The waterfront renovation, the Arts District lofts, the mixed-use complex that had won regional architecture awards last year. And this woman, Evelyn Hart, was sitting at his table. I believe you were supposed to meet someone tonight, she continued, her tone conversational but precise. My assistant, Rachel Chen. The floor seemed to tilt slightly beneath Lucas's feet. Rachel works for you? She does. Head of client relations. Exceptionally talented. Evelyn's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. She called me 2 hours ago in a state of panic. Said she couldn't go through with tonight, that she'd made a mistake setting up the date in the first place. The restaurant hummed around them. Low conversation, the clink of silverware, soft jazz from hidden speakers. But Lucas felt like the world had narrowed to just this table, this woman, this moment he couldn't quite comprehend. She panicked, he repeated slowly. Yes. Evelyn reached for the water glass David had placed when she sat down, taking a measured sip. Rachel is excellent at her job. She can negotiate contracts with developers twice her age, manage multiple project timelines simultaneously, anticipate problems before they materialize. But vulnerability? A small, almost amused exhale. That's not her strength. And you came instead. It wasn't really a question, more like Lucas trying to catch up to a reality that had shifted without warning. Evelyn set down her glass, her gaze direct. I don't like loose ends. When someone from my company makes a commitment, even a personal one, and fails to honor it, that reflects on me, on us. She paused, and her expression softened fractionally. And I don't like the idea of a decent person sitting alone at a table, wondering what they did wrong. Lucas felt something crack open inside him, not wide, just a hairline fracture in the armor he'd built over 3 years of protecting himself. How do you know I'm decent? He asked quietly. Because you're still here. Evelyn gestured to his empty plate, the single place setting. You didn't leave angry. You didn't send nasty messages. You ordered dinner and ate it with dignity. That tells me what I need to know. David appeared beside the table, clearly confused by the new arrival, but too professional to comment. Can I get you anything, ma'am? Evelyn glanced at Lucas. Have you had dessert? No. Coffee? Not yet. She looked up at David. 2 espressos. And bring your dessert menu. Right away. As David retreated, Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying this woman who'd appeared like something out of a fever dream. You didn't have to do this. Come here. You could have just had Rachel text an apology. I could have, Evelyn agreed. But that felt insufficient. Why? For the first time, she seemed to consider her words carefully, because Rachel has been talking about you for 3 weeks. Ever since your sister, Melissa, introduced you two through a mutual friend. She showed me your design portfolio, talked about your work, the way you rebuilt the visual identity for Northside Coffee, the branding project for that nonprofit. She was impressed. Lucas felt heat creep up his neck. She told you all that? Rachel and I have worked together for 6 years. We talk. Evelyn's fingers drummed once against the table, the first gesture Lucas had seen that suggested anything less than complete composure. She wanted to meet you, genuinely, but when tonight actually arrived, when it became real rather than theoretical, she realized she couldn't separate her professional admiration from the personal risk. And that scared her. Yes. The espressos arrived with a dessert menu. Neither of them looked at it. Lucas picked up the tiny cup, the warmth seeping into his palm. I still don't understand why you're here. Evelyn met his eyes across the table. Because I've been building things my entire adult life. Buildings, yes, but also teams, systems, relationships. And I've learned that when something has potential, when you see value in something, you don't waste it through cowardice or poor timing. You think this had potential? A blind date your assistant was too afraid to show up for? No. Evelyn's voice was steady. I think you have potential, and I think it would be a waste not to tell you that directly. The words hung in the air between them. Lucas took a sip of espresso, buying time to process. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He was supposed to make awkward small talk with Rachel, maybe discover they had nothing in common, go home and tell Emma that Daddy tried, but sometimes things just don't work out. Instead, he was sitting across from a woman who'd just upended every expectation he'd brought to this restaurant. "Your portfolio," Evelyn said, steering the conversation with practiced ease. "The Northside Coffee rebrand. I've seen dozens of coffee shop redesigns. Most of them are trendy garbage that'll look dated in 3 years. Yours was different." Lucas felt himself lean forward slightly. "How so?" "It felt true to the place. You didn't try to make it something it wasn't. The earthy color palette, the hand-drawn typography, the way you incorporated the neighborhood's history into the visual language." She paused. "It wasn't about chasing aesthetics. It was about identity." Something stirred in Lucas's chest. The same feeling he got when a design clicked into place, when all the elements aligned into something coherent and honest. "That's exactly what it was," he said quietly. The owner had been there for 20 years, knew every regular by name, served the same neighborhood through 3 different economic shifts. I didn't want to erase that. I wanted to honor it. "You succeeded." The simple validation landed harder than Lucas expected. He'd been freelancing for 18 months, scraping together projects while raising his kids, never quite sure if what he was building had real value or if he was just treading water. Evelyn reached into the bag she'd set beside her chair and pulled out a slim leather portfolio. She opened it, extracting a business card which she placed on the table between them. "Heart and Vale is preparing for a complete corporate rebrand," she said. "New logo, overhauled digital presence, visual identity system that can scale across multiple commercial properties. We're talking about a significant project, significant budget." Lucas picked up the card. Heavy stock, letterpress printing, quality that communicated seriousness. "You're offering me work?" "I'm offering you the opportunity to pitch for work." Evelyn's tone was crisp, businesslike. "This isn't charity." "I don't do charity. If you come in and your concepts don't meet our needs, I'll tell you directly and find someone else. But based on what I've seen, I believe you're capable of delivering what we need." Lucas's mind was racing. A project like this, with a company like Heart and Vale, could change everything. It could mean financial stability. It could mean rebuilding his professional reputation. It could mean showing Emma and his son Tyler that sometimes taking risks pays off. But it also meant working with this woman. This intense, controlled, impossibly direct woman who'd walked into a restaurant at 10:18 at night to have this conversation. "I need to be clear about something," Lucas said carefully. "I'm a single father. I have 2 kids. Emma's 8, Tyler's 11. My schedule isn't simple. I can't work late nights every night. I can't drop everything for last-minute meetings. My life has constraints." Evelyn didn't blink. "I'm not looking for simple. I'm looking for capable. Can you deliver quality work within reasonable timelines?" "Yes." "Can you communicate clearly when problems arise?" "Yes." "Can you handle direct feedback without taking it personally?" Lucas almost smiled at that. "I've been divorced for 3 years and co-parent with my ex-wife. Direct feedback is my daily reality." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression, not quite a smile, but close. "Then we'll make it work." David approached tentatively. "Have we decided on dessert?" Evelyn glanced at Lucas. "Are you a tiramisu person or a chocolate person?" The question was so unexpectedly normal, so far removed from the intensity of the previous conversation, that Lucas actually laughed. "Chocolate, always. 2 chocolate torts," Evelyn told David, "and 2 more espressos." As David left, Lucas shook his head slowly. "This is the strangest night of my life." "Strange good or strange bad?" "I honestly don't know yet." Evelyn lifted her espresso cup, her gray eyes catching the candlelight. "You stayed tonight, Lucas, after being stood up, after sitting alone for over an hour. You stayed and ate your dinner and maintained your dignity. That tells me you understand something important." "What's that?" "That showing up matters, that consistency matters, that how you handle disappointment reveals more about character than how you handle success." She set down the cup. "Those are the qualities I need in the people I work with." The desserts arrived, dense, dark, perfectly plated. They ate in silence for a moment, and Lucas found himself relaxing slightly. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something else. Curiosity, maybe. or possibility. Can I ask you something? Lucas said. Of course. Why do you care this much? About Rachel standing me up, I mean. You could have sent a text, like I said, or had her call me tomorrow. Why drive across town on a Friday night to handle this yourself? Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. When she spoke, her voice was lower, more personal than it had been. 2 years ago, I was supposed to meet with a young architect about a project. She'd submitted the most innovative proposal I'd seen in a decade. Fresh perspective, bold ideas, technically sound. She paused, cutting a small piece of tort. The day of our meeting, she canceled, said she'd accepted another position. I let it go, didn't push. 6 months later, I learned she'd taken a job at a firm that used her ideas and gave someone else the credit. She burnt out within a year. And you think if you'd pushed harder? I think I saw potential and failed to act on it decisively. Evelyn's gaze was steady. I don't make that mistake anymore. When I see value, I pursue it. Lucas felt the weight of that statement settle between them. And you saw value in me? In my work? Yes. One word, simple, direct, but it landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. They finished their desserts. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just one other table, a group of friends settling their bill with laughter and overlapping conversation. The servers had started their closing routines, wiping down the bar, straightening chairs. Evelyn checked her watch. It's late. I should let you go. Lucas nodded, but neither of them moved to leave. The pitch meeting, he said. When were you thinking? Next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Our offices are downtown. The address is on the card. Come with preliminary concepts. Nothing fully developed. I want to see how you think, how you approach problems. What's the timeline for the full project? 4 months for initial development, another 2 for implementation across all properties. She tilted her head slightly. Does that work with your constraints? Lucas did the math in his head. School schedules, soccer season ending, his mother offering to help more with the kids. It could work. It would be intense, but it could work. Yeah, he said. That works. Evelyn stood, gathering her coat. Lucas stood too, pulling out his wallet. This one's on me, Evelyn said, already placing a credit card on the check David had discreetly left. You don't have to consider it an investment in a future working relationship. She signed the receipt with a quick flourish. Besides, you already paid for your dinner. This is just dessert and coffee. They walked to the door together. Outside, the rain had intensified, creating a soft percussion against the awning. The street was nearly empty, shop lights reflecting in puddles. Evelyn pulled her coat tighter. Where are you parked? Lucas pointed to the lot across the street. Right there, you? 2 blocks down. She looked at him, rain misting around them in the glow of streetlights. Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Don't be late. I won't. She started to turn away, then paused. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you for staying tonight, for not leaving angry or bitter, for giving me the chance to make this right. Her expression softened in a way he hadn't seen all evening. I know this wasn't what you expected, but I think it might turn out to be something better. Before Lucas could respond, she'd stepped out into the rain, heels clicking purposefully down the sidewalk until she disappeared around the corner. Lucas stood under the awning for a long moment, business card in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. He'd come here for a blind date with a woman named Rachel. Instead, he'd met Evelyn Hart, and somehow, impossibly, the night hadn't been a disaster. It had been something else entirely. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister. How'd it go? Lucas looked at the message, then at the business card, then back toward the street where Evelyn had disappeared. How did it go? He honestly didn't know how to answer that. The rain fell harder. Lucas pulled up his collar and ran to his car, sliding into the driver's seat, still damp and slightly breathless. The drawing from Emma was still on the passenger seat, 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun. He picked it up, tracing the purple marker letters with his thumb. Good luck, Dad. Maybe he'd gotten lucky tonight after all, just not in the way anyone expected. The engine started with a familiar rumble. Lucas pulled out of the parking lot, windshield wipers beating rhythm against the rain, and drove home through streets that looked different now, sharper, more alive, full of possibility he hadn't noticed on the way here. Tuesday, 2 o'clock. He'd be ready. Because Lucas Bennett had learned something important over the past 3 years. Life rarely goes according to plan. But sometimes, just sometimes, it goes somewhere better instead. The question was whether he was brave enough to follow where it led. As he turned onto his street, seeing the lights on in his house, where his kids were probably still awake waiting to hear about Daddy's night, Lucas realized something. He'd spent so long just surviving, just getting through each day, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to anticipate something, to feel that flutter of nervous energy that comes from standing at the edge of possibility. But he felt it now, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth the risk. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Saturday morning, Lucas woke to Emma jumping on his bed, her small hands shaking his shoulder with the determined persistence only an 8-year-old could muster. "Dad! Dad! Tell me about the date!" he groaned, pulling the pillow over his face. "Emma, it's 7 in the morning. It's 7:30, and you promised you'd tell me everything." She bounced harder, the mattress springs protesting. "Was she pretty? Was she nice? Did you kiss her?" "Emma!" Tyler's voice drifted from the hallway, thick with preteen disdain. Gross. Nobody wants to hear about Dad kissing people." Lucas sat up, rubbing his eyes. Both kids were staring at him now. Emma perched on the edge of his bed in her purple pajamas, Tyler leaning against the doorframe with the carefully cultivated apathy of an 11-year-old who was definitely interested but would rather die than admit it. "The date was complicated," Lucas said finally. Emma's face fell. "She didn't like you?" "No, it's not that. She didn't show up." Tyler straightened. "What? That's messed up." "Language," Lucas said automatically. "But, yeah, she didn't show up." "So you just sat there alone?" Emma's voice had gone small, protective. "That's so sad." Lucas reached out and pulled her into a hug. "Hey, it wasn't that bad. I had a nice dinner, and then something unexpected happened." Both kids leaned in. "Someone else came," Lucas continued, choosing his words carefully. "A woman named Evelyn. She works with the person who was supposed to meet me. She came to apologize." "And?" Tyler prompted. "And she offered me a job, a really good job, a design project for her company." Emma's eyes went wide. "Like a big job? Like the kind that pays for stuff?" The question hit harder than it should have. Lucas had tried to shield them from the financial stress, from the reality of freelance feast and famine, but kids were perceptive. They noticed when he said no to extras, when he bought the cheaper cereal, when he worked late into the night after they'd gone to bed. "Yeah, baby, like the kind that pays for stuff." Emma threw her arms around his neck. "That's so good, Dad. See? I told you good luck would work." Tyler was quieter, more measured. "When do you start?" "I have a meeting Tuesday to pitch ideas. If they like what I come up with, then we'll see." "They'll like it," Emma said with absolute certainty. "Your stuff is the best." Lucas held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, and felt something shift in his chest. This was why he'd stayed at that restaurant, why he'd driven across town on a Friday night despite every instinct telling him to protect himself. Not for romance or possibility or any of that abstract nonsense. For this. For them. For the chance to give his kids something better than just getting by. The rest of Saturday was consumed by soccer practice, grocery shopping, and helping Tyler with a science project about renewable energy that was due Monday and which Tyler had definitely known about for 3 weeks but was only mentioning now. Normal chaos, familiar rhythms. But underneath it all, Lucas's mind kept drifting back to Tuesday. Sunday afternoon, after the kids had gone to their mothers for her bi-weekly custody time, Lucas sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by sketch pads, color swatches, and his laptop. Heart and Veil Development. He'd spent hours researching them. Their portfolio was impressive. Upscale residential towers, mixed-use commercial spaces, adaptive reuse projects that transformed historic buildings into modern venues. Everything they touched had a certain aesthetic. Clean lines, natural materials, spaces that felt both contemporary and timeless. But their branding was outdated. The logo looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s, a generic serif font with a forgettable icon. Their website was functional but lifeless. Their marketing materials were professional but bland, There was so much potential, so much opportunity to create something that actually reflected the quality of their work. Lucas sketched, discarded, sketched again. He thought about what Evelyn had said at the restaurant. You don't hide behind trends, you build from truth. What was true about Hart and Vale? What was the essence they needed to communicate? His phone rang. His sister. So, Melissa said without preamble, are you going to tell me what actually happened Friday night? Or are you going to keep sending me cryptic one-word responses? Lucas leaned back in his chair. It's complicated. You said that already. Elaborate. He told her everything. The waiting, the no-show, Evelyn's arrival, the job offer. Melissa was quiet for a long moment. Let me get this straight, she finally said. Rachel stood you up, so her boss, her CEO boss, drove across town to apologize in person and then offered you a major contract. That's the summary, yeah. Lucas, that's insane. I know. Like, completely insane. I know. Another pause. Then, what's she like, Evelyn? Lucas stared at his sketches. How did you describe someone like Evelyn Hart? Intense, controlled, direct. But there was something else too, something underneath the professional veneer. He'd glimpsed it in those moments when her guard had dropped fractionally, when she'd talked about the young architect, when she'd thanked him for staying. She's, formidable, he said finally. But fair, I think. Maybe. I don't really know yet. Are you attracted to her? Mel, it's a valid question. She showed up at your failed date, bought you dessert, offered you work. That's either very professional or very interested, or both. Lucas rubbed his temples. It doesn't matter. This is a business opportunity. That's all. Uh-huh. I'm serious. I need this project. We need this project. I'm not going to mess it up by making it complicated. Life's already complicated, little brother. Might as well enjoy the ride. They talked for a few more minutes before Melissa had to go. After hanging up, Lucas returned to his sketches, but his sister's question lingered. Was he attracted to Evelyn? He barely knew her. They'd spent maybe 40 minutes together. That wasn't enough time to be attracted to someone. That was barely enough time to form a first impression. But there had been something. When she'd looked at him across that table, when she'd said, "You have potential," with such quiet certainty, when she'd thanked him for staying, Lucas shook his head, forcing himself to focus. Tuesday, 2 o'clock. That was what mattered. The sketches were coming together. He had 3 different directions, each exploring a different aspect of Hart and Vale's identity. Strong concepts, clean execution, enough to demonstrate his thinking without overwhelming them with options. By Sunday night, he had the beginnings of a pitch he could actually be proud of. Monday brought its own challenges. The science fair project catastrophe continued. Tyler's wind turbine model collapsed during the bus ride to school, requiring an emergency repair session in the parking lot using tape and prayer. Emma forgot her lunch. Lucas's freelance client called with last-minute revisions on a logo he'd considered finished. But somehow, in between all of it, Lucas refined his Hart and Vale concepts. He worked during Emma's piano lesson. He worked after the kids went to bed. He worked with a focus he hadn't felt in months, driven by something beyond just professional necessity. He wanted to impress Evelyn. The realization hit him around midnight as he adjusted kerning on the 3rd logo variation. He wanted her to see these concepts and recognize that she'd been right about him, that he was capable, that he understood identity and truth and all those things she'd talked about. It mattered what she thought, more than it probably should. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that early March sometimes offered, cold but bright, the sky scrubbed clean by weekend rain. Lucas drove the kids to school, kissed them goodbye, and returned home to get ready. He'd laid out his clothes the night before, charcoal slacks, navy blazer, white button-down. Professional, but not trying too hard. The meeting was at 2, which gave him hours to obsess over details. He printed his concepts on good paper, organized them in a portfolio case he'd bought years ago and rarely used, rehearsed his presentation talking points while pacing his living room. At 1:15, he left for downtown. The Hart and Vale offices occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. Lucas had passed the building hundreds of times without really seeing it. Now, standing in the marble lobby, Watching professionals in expensive suits move through the space with practiced efficiency, he felt distinctly out of place. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting. Lucas caught his reflection and tried not to fixate on the slight coffee stain he'd noticed on his cuff during the drive over. 14th floor. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that was all clean lines and natural wood. A young woman sat behind a curved desk, headset on, typing rapidly. She looked up as Lucas approached. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" "Lucas Bennett. I have a 2 o'clock with Evelyn Hart." She checked her screen. "Of course. Ms. Hart is running about 10 minutes behind. Can I offer you water or coffee while you wait?" "Water would be great, thanks." She gestured to a seating area, low leather chairs, architectural magazines on a glass table, windows overlooking the city. Lucas sat, portfolio case on his lap, and tried to calm the nervous energy thrumming through his veins. 10 minutes became 15, then 20. At 2:25, the receptionist's phone beezed softly. She answered, nodded, then looked at Lucas. "Ms. Hart can see you now. Conference room C. Straight down that hallway, last door on the left." Lucas stood, gripping the portfolio case. "Thanks." The hallway was lined with photographs, Hart and Vale projects over the years. Lucas recognized several as he walked. The waterfront renovation, the historic theater conversion. Each image represented millions of dollars, thousands of decisions, layers upon layers of expertise, and he was supposed to rebrand the company behind all of it. The conference room door was open. Inside, Evelyn stood at the far end of a long table, reviewing something on her tablet. She wore a dove-gray suit today, her hair in the same elegant knot. She looked up as Lucas entered. "Lucas? Thank you for coming." She gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." He moved to the indicated seat, setting his portfolio case on the table. The room was all glass, floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides offering sweeping views of the city. Evelyn sat across from him, hands folded on the table. "Before we begin, I want to establish some parameters. This is a preliminary meeting. I want to see how you think about the problem before we discuss contracts or timelines. Ask questions. Challenge assumptions. Show me your process." Lucas nodded. "Understood." "Good." She slid a folder across the table. "These are our current brand guidelines. As you can see, they're minimal. We've never invested significantly in cohesive visual identity." Lucas opened the folder. She wasn't kidding. A basic logo. A limited color palette. Standard fonts. No real system or strategy. "May I ask why?" he said. "Your projects are sophisticated. Your reputation is strong. Why not invest in branding that reflects that?" Evelyn leaned back slightly. "Honest answer? We haven't needed to. Our work speaks for itself. We get clients through reputation and relationships, not marketing." "But that's changing. How did you know?" "Because you're here," Lucas said simply. "Because you're investing in a rebrand now." Something shifted. For the first time since he'd entered the room, Evelyn smiled, small but genuine. "We're expanding. 3 new markets over the next 18 months, which means competing for clients who don't know our reputation, who will judge us on first impressions. And your current brand doesn't make a strong first impression." "No, it doesn't." Lucas pulled his concepts from the portfolio case. "Before I show you anything, I need to ask, what do you want people to feel when they encounter Hart and Vale?" Evelyn considered the question. "Trust. That we'll deliver what we promise. That we understand the relationship between space and human experience. That we build things that last. Not innovation, not cutting edge. Those are means, not ends. I don't want people to think we're innovative for its own sake. I want them to know we innovate in service of durability and meaning." Lucas felt something click into place. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." He laid out the first concept, a mark built from geometric shapes that could be stacked, rotated, rearranged while maintaining structural integrity. The foundation always solid, the configuration always changing. "This represents adaptability within a framework," Lucas explained. "You can apply it across different contexts, residential, commercial, mixed use, and it remains recognizable while feeling specific to each application." Evelyn studied it in silence. Lucas waited, heart hammering. "Show me the next one," she said finally. The second concept was more organic, intersecting lines that suggested both architectural plans and natural growth patterns. The typography was custom, each letter form designed to feel constructed but not mechanical. This one emphasizes the relationship between built environment and natural world, Lucas said. Your projects often incorporate green space, natural light, sustainable materials. This brand language could reinforce that philosophy. Evelyn's fingers traced the lines on the page. And the third? The third was the simplest, a refined word mark with subtle architectural details embedded in the letter forms. The crossbar of the H echoed a beam. The V suggested a roof angle, small touches that rewarded attention without demanding it. This is about confidence, Lucas said, not needing to shout, letting the work speak while the brand provides a frame. Evelyn was quiet for a long time. She studied each concept, moving between them, considering them from different angles. Lucas forced himself to stay silent, to not fill the space with nervous chatter, to let her think. Finally, she looked up. "These are good," she said. "Better than I expected for a preliminary meeting." Relief washed through Lucas, but Evelyn wasn't finished. "But they're all missing something." She tapped the second concept. "This one is closest. The idea of natural integration, but it feels safe, gentle. Heart and veil isn't gentle." "What is it?" Evelyn stood, walking to the window. The city spread out below them, steel and glass and stone, layer upon layer of human ambition. "We build for permanence in a disposable world," she said quietly. "We fight for quality when everyone else is cutting corners. We say no to projects that don't align with our values, even when it costs us money." She turned back to face Lucas. "We're not gentle. We're rigorous, uncompromising." "That needs to be in the brand." Lucas grabbed his sketch pad, mind already racing. "Tell me more. What does uncompromising look like?" "It looks like walking away from a $10 million project because the client wanted us to use cheaper materials." "When did that happen?" "Last year. They threatened to sue. We didn't blink." Lucas was sketching now, quick lines, exploring ideas. "What else?" "It looks like telling a city council that their timeline was unrealistic, and we wouldn't bid on the project unless they extended it by 6 months. Did they extend it?" "They did, because they knew we were right." "What else?" Evelyn moved closer, looking over his shoulder at the emerging sketch. "It looks like hiring a team of consultants to study the environmental impact of our projects, and then implementing every single recommendation they made, even though it added $2 million to our costs." Lucas's hand moved faster. The concept taking shape was harder than what he'd brought. Sharper edges, stronger contrasts, less concerned with being liked and more concerned with being respected. "It looks like this," he said, turning the pad so Evelyn could see. She stared at the sketch. Lucas had stripped away the organic elements, the gentle curves. What remained was architectural in the purest sense. Clean angles, precise proportions, negative space used as deliberately as positive. The word mark was bold without being aggressive, confident without arrogance. "Yes," Evelyn said softly. "That's closer." They spent the next 2 hours working, not as client and contractor, as collaborators. Evelyn pushed. Lucas pushed back. She questioned every choice. Why this weight? Why that spacing? Why not stronger? Why not simpler? And Lucas answered, defending his decisions or adapting them, the concepts evolving in real time. Somewhere around 4:30, Evelyn's assistant knocked softly. "Ms. Hart, your 4 o'clock is waiting." Evelyn didn't look away from the sketches spread across the table. "Reschedule it." "It's the investors from Portland. Reschedule it." Her tone left no room for discussion. The assistant retreated. Lucas glanced up. "I can come back if you need to." "No." Evelyn met his eyes. "This is more important." The certainty in her voice sent a charge through the room. They kept working, refinement after refinement. At some point, someone brought coffee. Lucas didn't remember drinking it, but the cup ended up empty. By 6 o'clock, they had something. Not finished, not even close, but directionally right. A visual language that felt like heart and veil, rigorous and uncompromising and built to last. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, studying the final sketch. This is what we needed. Lucas felt the exhaustion hit him all at once. His hand cramped from hours of sketching. His shoulders ached from hunching over the table, but underneath the physical tiredness was something else. Exhilaration. He couldn't remember the last time he'd worked like this. Not just executing someone else's vision, but truly collaborating, creating something neither of them could have made alone. "What happens now?" he asked. Evelyn checked her watch. "Now I take this to my partners. Get their input. Assuming they agree, and they will, we move forward with developing the full system. Timeline? 2 weeks to refine the primary mark. Another month for the complete visual identity. Then implementation begins." She paused. "Are you still willing to work within your constraints?" Lucas thought about Emma and Tyler, about soccer practices and homework help and bedtime routines that couldn't be compromised. But he also thought about the chance to build something meaningful, to do work that mattered with someone who understood excellence. "I can make it work," he said. Evelyn stood, extending her hand across the table. "Then we have a deal." Her grip was firm, professional. But when their hands met, something passed between them, a current of understanding, of mutual respect that felt like it could become something more if either of them were brave enough to let it. Lucas pulled back first, gathering his materials. "I should get going. Need to pick up my kids from my ex-wife's." "Of course." Evelyn walked him to the door. "Lucas?" He turned. "Thank you for this afternoon, for pushing back when I was wrong, for listening when I was right, for understanding the difference. That's the job, isn't it?" "No," she said quietly. "That's a partnership." Lucas left the building as daylight faded into dusk. The city lights were coming on, office windows glowing gold against the deepening blue of the sky. He sat in his car for a moment before starting the engine, letting the day settle. Something had shifted this afternoon, something beyond just landing a client or securing income. He'd connected with Evelyn on a level that transcended business. They challenged each other, trusted each other, built something together that was better than either could have created alone. And now they were going to spend the next 4 months working together, collaborating, probably arguing, definitely creating. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like possibility. Lucas's phone buzzed. A text from his ex-wife, Jennifer. "Kids ready whenever you are. Tyler aced his science fair, by the way. 2nd place." Pride swelled in Lucas's chest. He typed back, "Awesome, be there in 15. As he pulled into traffic, Lucas caught his reflection in the rear-view mirror. He looked different somehow. More awake than he'd been in months. More present. The drive to Jennifer's house took him through familiar streets. They'd bought their first home together 3 blocks from here. Tyler had learned to ride a bike in that park. Emma had taken her first steps in that coffee shop they'd spent Sunday mornings in. History everywhere, memories embedded in geography. But tonight, Lucas didn't feel weighed down by it. He felt instead like someone standing at a crossroads, about to choose a new direction. Jennifer's porch light was on. Tyler and Emma were visible through the front window, gathering their backpacks. Lucas parked and walked to the door. Jennifer answered before he could knock. "Hey," she said. She looked tired. She always looked tired these days. Her new marriage wasn't easy. Her stepkids were challenging. Life had gotten complicated in different ways for both of them. "Hey, heard about Tyler's project. That's great." "He worked hard on it," she smiled. "Well, he worked hard on it after procrastinating for 3 weeks." "That's our kid." Emma appeared at Jennifer's side. "Dad, I helped Tyler. I held the base while he glued." "That's teamwork, baby." Lucas crouched down, opening his arms. Both kids crashed into him. Emma with her usual enthusiasm, Tyler with the almost embarrassed affection of a boy trying to figure out how to be both kid and teenager. Jennifer watched them with an expression Lucas knew well. Affection mixed with regret. Love tangled with loss. "How was your weekend?" she asked. Lucas stood, kids still attached to his sides. "Productive. Really productive, actually. I got a new client, big project." "That's wonderful, Lucas. I'm happy for you." And she meant it. That was the thing about Jennifer. The divorce had been necessary for both of them, but it hadn't killed the care. They'd failed as partners, but not as parents, not as people who'd once loved each other and still wanted the other to be okay. "Thanks. Hey, I might need some flexibility with the schedule over the next few months. Nothing major, just some evening meetings, maybe occasional weekend work." Jennifer nodded. We can make it work. Just let me know when you know. The drive home was full of kid chatter. Emma's detailed account of a playground drama involving someone named Sophie and disputed swing turns. Tyler's analysis of why his wind turbine had performed better than the third-place winners. The comfortable chaos of family. But underneath it all, Lucas's mind kept drifting back to that conference room. To Evelyn's intensity. To the way she'd said that's a partnership with quiet conviction. After homework and dinner and the inevitable battle over screen time, Lucas finally got both kids to bed. He stood in the hallway between their rooms, listening to Emma's soft breathing and Tyler's occasional sleep mumbles, feeling the weight of responsibility and love that defined his life now. This was what mattered. This was the foundation everything else had to be built around. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for something else too. Lucas returned to the kitchen table where his laptop waited. He opened his email to find a message from Evelyn sent 20 minutes ago. Subject: Contract and next steps attached was a formal agreement outlining the scope of work, timeline, and compensation. The numbers were fair, more than fair. They represented stability, security, the ability to say yes to Emma's request for art supplies and Tyler's desire to join the club soccer team. But at the bottom of the email, below the professional details, was a single line. Looking forward to building something meaningful together. E. Lucas stared at those words. Building something meaningful. Yes, that's exactly what this was. He typed his response. Contract looks good. I'll sign and return tomorrow. And Evelyn? Thank you for seeing potential when someone else saw fear. That means more than you might realize. He hesitated, then added, looking forward to the work ahead. L. Professional. Appropriate. Honest. He hit send before he could second guess it. Outside, the March wind rattled the windows. Lucas made himself a cup of tea and returned to his sketches, refining the concepts from this afternoon, pushing them further toward that uncompromising clarity Evelyn had demanded. The work energized him. Every line felt purposeful. Every decision felt right. Somewhere around 11, his phone buzzed. Another email from Evelyn. Still working? Lucas smiled and typed back. Occupational hazard. You? Her response came within seconds. Always. Send me what you're working on. He photographed his latest sketches and attached them. 3 minutes later. Better, but the weight is still too timid. Be bolder. You're allowed to take up space. Lucas adjusted the sketch, darkened the lines, increased the contrast. Another photo. Another email. Yes, that's it. Good night, Lucas. Good night, Evelyn. What? He set down his phone, looking at the refined sketch. She was right. It was better, stronger, more honest, just like she'd pushed him to be in that conference room, to trust his instincts, to not hide behind safe choices. Lucas finished his tea and finally headed to bed, knowing sleep would come easier tonight than it had in a long time. Because for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't just surviving. He was building, creating, moving towards something instead of just away from pain. And whether that something was the rebrand or the connection with Evelyn, or simply the rediscovery of his own capabilities, Lucas couldn't quite say. Maybe it was all three. Maybe that was okay. The house settled into quiet. Outside, the city hummed with its endless activity, people working late shifts and driving home from dates and making decisions that would change their lives without knowing it yet. Lucas closed his eyes and thought about Tuesday afternoon, about Evelyn's gray eyes studying his work, about the way her voice had softened when she'd said, "That's a partnership," about possibility. And for once, he let himself imagine that maybe the story of Lucas Bennett wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm, intense and consuming in ways Lucas hadn't anticipated. He met with Evelyn twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, always at 2 o'clock, always in conference room C with its sweeping city views. They'd spend hours dissecting concepts, debating typography choices, arguing over color palettes with an intensity that sometimes bordered on fierce. "This blue is too soft," Evelyn said during their third meeting, tapping the screen where Lucas had displayed his latest iteration. "It says approachable. We're not trying to be approachable. We're not trying to be intimidating either," Lucas countered. "There's a middle ground between soft and aggressive." "Show me." He adjusted the saturation, darkened the hue by increments until Evelyn held up her hand. There. That's authority without arrogance. Lucas saved the change, making notes. They'd been at this for 90 minutes already, and his coffee had gone cold an hour ago. "Can I ask you something?" he said, leaning back in his chair. Evelyn looked up from the brand guidelines they were developing. "Of course." "Why does this matter so much to you? The rebrand, I mean. You said yourself that Heart and Veil gets clients through reputation. This is just packaging." Her expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. "It's never just packaging." "Then what is it?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming that single tap against the table that Lucas had learned meant she was deciding how honest to be. "My father started this company 40 years ago," she said finally. "Built it from nothing. He had vision and integrity and a complete inability to compromise on quality. But he also had no interest in marketing or branding or any of that. He thought the work should speak for itself. And it did. It did, until he got sick, until the recession hit, and suddenly reputation wasn't enough. We almost lost everything." Her voice remained steady, but Lucas heard something underneath it. Old fear, old anger. "I took over 8 years ago, rebuilt the client base, stabilized the finances, but we're still using his logo, his guidelines, his vision." Lucas understood suddenly. "And you need it to be yours now." "I need it to be ours. The company he built, but the future I'm creating." She met his eyes. "Does that make sense?" "Yeah," Lucas said quietly. "It makes perfect sense." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of parallel struggles, her fighting to honor legacy while forging her own path, him fighting to build a future while carrying the weight of his past. The meetings became the anchor points of Lucas's weeks. Everything else arranged itself around those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Emma's soccer practice got rescheduled. Tyler's tutoring session moved to Mondays. Jennifer agreed to take the kids an extra evening when Lucas needed to prepare presentations. But it wasn't just the formal meetings. Emails flew back and forth at all hours. Lucas would send a revised concept at 10 p.m. and wake to Evelyn's feedback waiting in his inbox, time-stamped at 6:30 a.m. She worked constantly, he realized. Evenings, weekends, early mornings before the city fully woke. "Don't you sleep?" he asked during their fourth meeting. Evelyn smiled slightly. "I sleep plenty. I just don't need much." "That's not healthy." Says the man who sent me 3 revised mock-ups at midnight last night. Lucas had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was on a roll. The kids were asleep. I got caught up." "I know the feeling." She tilted her head, studying him. "You love this. The work." "I do. Even when I make you redo things 5 times? Especially then." Lucas surprised himself with the honesty. "You push me, make me better. I haven't had that since..." He stopped. "Since when?" "Since before the divorce. When I was at the firm, I had a creative director who challenged me like this, made me defend every choice. It made the work stronger." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Good leadership isn't about accepting everything. It's about knowing when to push and when to trust." "And which am I getting right now?" She leaned forward, her gray eyes intent. "Both. Always both." By the end of March, they'd finalized the primary logo. The mark was sharp and architectural, clean angles that suggested both strength and precision, negative space used as deliberately as positive. The word mark was bold without being aggressive, the letter forms custom designed to echo the structural elements of Heart and Veil's buildings. It was uncompromising, rigorous, built to last. It was perfect. The presentation to Evelyn's partners was scheduled for the first week of April. Lucas spent the preceding weekend building the pitch deck, refining every slide, every transition, every word of the accompanying narrative. Emma found him at the kitchen table Sunday afternoon, surrounded by printouts and color swatches. "Dad, you promised we'd go to the park." Lucas looked up, guilt washing over him. "You're right. I did. Let me just finish this one section. You said that an hour ago." She was right. He had. Lucas closed his laptop. "You're absolutely right. Park time. Go grab your jacket." Emma brightened immediately. "Can we get ice cream after?" "It's 50 degrees out." "That's warm enough for ice cream." Lucas laughed, ruffling her hair. "Fine. Ice cream it is." At the park, he pushed Emma on the swings while Tyler practiced skateboarding with some kids from school. The afternoon was clear and cool, spring beginning to assert itself against winter's lingering cold. "Your work lady is pretty," Emma said from the swing, pumping her legs. Lucas nearly stumbled. "What?" "The lady you work for. I saw her picture on your computer. She's pretty." "Emma, that's not... We're just working together." "Uh-huh." Emma had that knowing tone that 8-year-olds somehow mastered. "Do you like her?" "She's my client." "That's not what I asked." Lucas caught the swing, bringing it to a gentle stop. Emma looked at him with those bright, impossible-to-lie-to eyes. "She's impressive," he said carefully. "She's very good at what she does, and she makes me better at what I do. But it's professional, baby. Just business." "Okay." Emma resumed swinging. "But if you did like her, that would be okay. You're allowed to like people, Dad." The casual permission from his 8-year-old daughter hit harder than it should have. "Thanks, Em. I'll keep that in mind." Later, after ice cream and homework and bedtime stories, Lucas sat alone in his living room thinking about Emma's words. You're allowed to like people. Was he attracted to Evelyn? The question had been circling for weeks, always pushed aside by work demands and parental responsibilities and the simple fear of examining it too closely. But here, in the quiet of his empty living room, Lucas let himself consider it. Yes, he was attracted to her. Not just physically, though she was beautiful in that sharp, controlled way, but to her mind, her intensity, the way she challenged him, the way she listened, the way she pushed for excellence without ever being cruel about it. But attraction was irrelevant. She was his client. This was the most important professional opportunity he'd had in years. He couldn't risk it by making things personal. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Quick question about the typography specifications. Do you have a minute?" Lucas smiled despite himself. 10 p.m. on a Sunday and she was still working. He called instead of texting back. "That was fast," Evelyn said by way of greeting. "I was up. What's the question?" They spent 20 minutes discussing font licensing and technical specifications, mundane details that somehow became engaging because of how seriously Evelyn took every aspect of the project. "I think that covers it," she said finally. "Sorry to bother you on a Sunday night." "It's not a bother. I was just thinking about the pitch anyway." "Nervous?" "Wouldn't you be? I'm presenting to the leadership team of a major development company. This could change everything for me." "It will change everything," Evelyn said quietly. "But not because of the pitch, because of the work. What you've created is exceptional, Lucas. They're going to see that." The confidence in her voice steadied something in him. "Thank you," he said, "for believing in this. In me." A pause on the other end, then, "I don't believe in things that aren't true. You're talented. That's just fact." After they hung up, Lucas sat holding his phone, feeling the warmth of her words settle into his chest. He was in dangerous territory. He knew it. Felt it in the way his heart rate picked up when her name appeared on his screen, in the way he prepared for their meetings with more care than strictly necessary, in the way he found himself wondering what she thought about things that had nothing to do with branding or business. But knowing you're in dangerous territory and knowing how to navigate out of it are two different things entirely. The presentation was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. Lucas arrived 30 minutes early, portfolio case in hand, wearing his best suit, the one he'd bought for job interviews 3 years ago and rarely had occasion to wear since. The receptionist smiled when she saw him. "They're ready for you in the main conference room, 3rd floor. Elevators are just... I know where they are. Thanks." The main conference room was larger than the one Lucas had grown accustomed to. A massive table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views. 4 people were already seated. Evelyn at the head of the table, composed and professional in a navy suit. 2 men Lucas recognized from the website, Michael Chen and Robert Davidson, the other senior partners. And a woman he didn't know, mid-50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. "Lucas?" Evelyn stood. "Thank you for coming. Let me introduce everyone. Michael Chen, VP of Development, Robert Davidson, Chief Financial Officer, and Margaret Wells, our Director of Marketing and Communications." Lucas shook hands around the table, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. "We've heard a lot about this rebrand," Michael said, his tone friendly but assessing. Evelyn's been quite enthusiastic. Has she? Lucas glanced at Evelyn, who maintained her professional mask perfectly. She has, which is notable because Evelyn isn't typically enthusiastic about anything. Michael grinned. So no pressure, but you've set the bar pretty high. Lucas set up his presentation, connecting his laptop to the room's display system. His hands were steady. The nervous energy had transformed into focus. Before I show you anything, he began, I want to talk about truth. That got their attention. Every company has a story they tell themselves and a story they tell the world. Sometimes those stories align. Often they don't. Lucas advanced to the first slide, a collage of Hart and Vale's projects. Your story to the world has been quality development firm with strong reputation. True, but generic. Every firm says that. He advanced again. Now the screen showed the current Hart and Vale logo. Bland, forgettable, decades out of date. Your visual identity reinforces that generic story. It says you're established and professional. It doesn't say what makes you different. Robert leaned forward. And what makes us different? You're uncompromising. Lucas met his eyes. You walked away from a $10 million project last year because the client wanted cheaper materials. You told a city council their timeline was unrealistic and refused to bid until they fixed it. You spent $2 million extra implementing environmental recommendations that weren't required. Margaret's eyebrows rose. You've done your homework. I interviewed 12 people who've worked with Hart and Vale, former clients, contractors, city officials. Every single one used the word rigorous. 7 used demanding. 5 said you were the most difficult company they'd ever worked with. Lucas smiled. 4 said you were also the best. Evelyn's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Lucas advanced to the next slide. So the question isn't how do we make you look approachable or trendy or any of that shallow nonsense. The question is, how do we communicate rigor? How do we make uncompromising look like the virtue it is? He revealed the new logo. The room went silent. The mark was bold and architectural, precise angles, strong proportions, negative space that created structural integrity within the design itself. The word mark was custom, each letter form designed to echo building elements while remaining readable and elegant. It was everything they'd worked toward, everything Lucas and Evelyn had refined through countless hours of collaboration. It was uncompromising. This isn't trying to be friendly, Lucas continued. It's not trying to be liked. It's communicating what you actually are, a company that prioritizes lasting value over short-term approval. That builds for permanence in a disposable world. He walked them through the complete system. The color palette, deep blues and grays that suggested both water and stone. Natural elements made permanent. The typography choices. The grid structure that could flex across applications while maintaining consistency. Margaret spoke first. It's strong. Maybe too strong. We don't want to alienate potential clients. You're already alienating potential clients, Lucas said bluntly. The ones who want cheap and fast. And that's good, because those clients would waste your time. This brand attracts the clients who value what you actually offer. Michael nodded slowly. He's not wrong. We've spent years trying to be palatable to everyone and ended up memorable to no one. But this is a significant departure, Robert said, studying the designs. It's not an iteration, it's a revolution. Because iteration isn't enough. Lucas advanced to a comparison slide. Old logo versus new. Evolution works when you're moving in the right direction. You weren't. This isn't about evolving. It's about aligning your visual identity with your actual values. The partners exchanged glances. Lucas could feel Evelyn watching him but didn't dare look at her. I want to sit with this, Margaret said finally. Review the complete guidelines. See how it applies across different contexts. Of course. Lucas pulled up the comprehensive brand book. I've developed applications for everything: business cards, signage, website, marketing materials, building hoarding, interior wayfinding. It's all here. They spent another hour going through details. Margaret had sharp questions about implementation timelines. Robert wanted cost projections. Michael asked about flexibility and scalability. Lucas answered everything, confident in the work he and Evelyn had built together. Finally, Evelyn spoke for the first time since the presentation began. I want to be clear about something, she said, her tone carrying weight. I've been in this industry for 15 years. I've worked with dozens of design firms and independent contractors. What Lucas has created here is the best branding work I've ever seen. Not the prettiest, not the trendiest, the most honest. The other partners looked at her with varying degrees of surprise. That's high praise, Michael said. It's accurate praise. Evelyn's gaze remained steady. This rebrand will cost money to implement. It will require discipline to maintain. It will absolutely alienate some potential clients, but it will also attract the clients we actually want to work with, the ones who value the same things we do. Margaret nodded slowly. When you put it that way, I'm putting it the only way that matters. We can keep pretending we're something we're not, or we can commit to being exactly who we are. Evelyn finally looked at Lucas. This gives us permission to stop pretending. The meeting concluded with Margaret and Robert wanting a week to review everything. Michael was ready to approve immediately. Evelyn stayed neutral, letting her partners debate. As everyone gathered their materials, Michael approached Lucas. That was impressive, he said, extending his hand. Evelyn said you were good. She undersold it. Thank you. That means a lot. Between you and me? Michael lowered his voice. I've never seen Evelyn champion anyone like this. You must have made quite an impression. Lucas didn't know what to say to that. After the others left, Evelyn and Lucas remained in the conference room, the presentation still glowing on the screen. You did well, she said quietly. We did well. This is as much yours as mine. No, I pushed. You created. There's a difference. She moved to stand beside him, both of them looking at the logo displayed on the massive screen. My father would have hated this. Too bold. Too much. But he's not running the company anymore. I am. She turned to face Lucas. And I think it's perfect. The word hung between them. Perfect. Weighted with more than just professional assessment. Lucas should have stepped back, should have maintained distance, should have remembered all his careful reasoning about keeping this strictly business. Instead, he said, "Have dinner with me." Evelyn blinked. What? Not as client and contractor, not to discuss the project, just dinner, as two people who might want to know each other outside of conference rooms. For the first time since Lucas had met her, Evelyn looked uncertain. That's probably not a good idea, she said carefully. Probably not, Lucas agreed, but I'm asking anyway. She studied him for a long moment. Lucas could see her weighing options, calculating risks, the same analytical approach she brought to everything. I don't date casually, she said finally. I don't have time for games or uncertainty or figuring out what someone wants. I work constantly. I'm demanding. I have very little patience for inefficiency in any area of my life. Okay? And I'm your client. This could complicate things professionally. It could. So why are you asking? Lucas took a breath. Because in 6 weeks of working together, you've challenged me and frustrated me and made me better than I knew I could be. Because you're brilliant and intense and completely uncompromising in the best possible way. Because my 8-year-old daughter saw your picture on my laptop and told me I'm allowed to like people. He smiled slightly. And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you walked into that restaurant and sat down at my table without waiting for permission. Evelyn's expression softened, just fractionally, but enough. Your daughter sounds wise, she said. She is. I can't do this if it's going to be complicated. If you're still figuring out what you want or if you're looking for casual, I don't have space in my life for that. I'm a single father with 2 kids and a demanding career I'm trying to rebuild, Lucas said. Nothing about my life is casual. If I'm asking you to dinner, it's because I think this, he gestured between them, might be worth the complication. Evelyn was quiet. Then, Saturday, 7 o'clock. There's a restaurant in the Pearl District I've been wanting to try. Lucas felt something release in his chest. Saturday works. And Lucas? This doesn't change our professional relationship. The rebrand still has to be excellent. I'll still push you, expect more from you. I wouldn't want it any other way. She smiled then, a real smile, unguarded and genuine. Good, because neither would I. Lucas left the building feeling like gravity had shifted slightly. The city looked different, sharper, more alive. He called Jennifer on the way to pick up the kids, asking if she could take them Saturday night. Hot date? She asked, and there was no bitterness in it, Just friendly curiosity. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Good for you, Lucas, really. You deserve something good. At home that evening, after dinner and homework and the usual bedtime routine, Lucas found himself back at his kitchen table with his sketch pad. But instead of refining brand concepts, he just sat there, thinking about Saturday, about Evelyn's gray eyes and sharp mind, and the way she'd said, "I don't date casually," like it was both warning and promise. About how terrifying it was to want something again after convincing himself he was fine with just getting by. About possibility and risk and the way life sometimes shifts when you're not looking. His phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. "I should clarify something about Saturday." Lucas's heart stuttered. Here it came. The backpedaling, the second thoughts. This isn't me being impulsive. I don't do impulsive. I've thought about this for weeks. About you. About whether pursuing this was worth the professional risk. Another message followed. "I've decided it is. Just wanted you to know this is a deliberate choice, not a moment of weakness." Lucas smiled and typed back, "Good to know. Because so is this. See you Thursday for our regular meeting? Wouldn't miss it. Professional boundaries until Saturday? Absolutely. Good night, Lucas. Good night, Evelyn." He set down his phone and looked around his modest kitchen, dishes drying in the rack, kids' artwork covering the refrigerator, the comfortable clutter of a life built around other people's needs. This was his foundation, his kids, his responsibilities, the life he'd carefully constructed after everything fell apart. But maybe there was room for something more. Maybe foundation didn't mean limitation. Maybe it meant you had something solid to build from. Lucas thought about Friday night at Maria Verde, about sitting alone at that table, eating pasta with quiet dignity, refusing to let disappointment diminish him. He'd thought that was the end of something. The final confirmation that he was meant to navigate life solo, focused entirely on his kids and his work. Instead, it had been the beginning. The moment everything changed, because Evelyn had walked through that door and seen something in him worth pursuing, worth investing in, worth taking a risk for. And now, 6 weeks later, they were going to have dinner, not as client and contractor, as two people who'd built something together and wanted to see what else they might create. Lucas closed his sketchpad and headed to bed, feeling the pleasant weight of anticipation that had been absent from his life for so long. Saturday was 4 days away. 4 days to finish the brand guidelines, to prepare for their regular Thursday meeting, to figure out what someone wears on a date with a woman like Evelyn Hart. 4 days to convince himself that this was a good idea, that he wasn't risking too much, that opening himself up to possibility wasn't just inviting pain. But deep down, Lucas already knew the truth. He was going to show up Saturday, just like he'd shown up Friday night at Maria Verde. Because showing up was what he did. It was who he was. And sometimes, just sometimes, showing up changed everything. Thursday's meeting carried a new tension that had nothing to do with typography or color theory. Lucas arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, portfolio case in hand, and found Evelyn already in conference room C reviewing the latest brand guidelines on her tablet. She looked up when he entered, and for a fraction of a second, something unguarded crossed her face before the professional mask slid back into place. "Lucas, good. I have questions about the digital applications." "Of course." He sat across from her, their usual positions, and pulled out his laptop. "What specifically?" They worked for 90 minutes, and to anyone watching it would have looked exactly like every other meeting they'd had over the past 6 weeks. Evelyn challenged. Lucas defended or adapted. They debated details with the same intensity as always, but underneath the professional veneer, Lucas felt the awareness humming between them. The way Evelyn's gaze would linger half a second longer than necessary. The way his pulse would quicken when she leaned closer to examine something on his screen. The careful distance they both maintained, not letting hands brush when passing papers, not sitting quite as close as they had before. Professional boundaries until Saturday. They were both honoring that agreement. But the effort was visible. "The mobile responsiveness needs work," Evelyn said, scrolling through the website mock-ups. "The logo is losing clarity at smaller sizes." Lucas made notes. "I'll create a simplified version for mobile applications. Same visual language, reduced complexity." "Good. And the shh." She stopped mid-sentence, looking at him. "Are we going to talk about Saturday? I thought we agreed to keep professional boundaries until then." "We did. But pretending there isn't tension in this room seems counterproductive. Lucas set down his pen. What do you want to say about it? Evelyn was quiet for a moment, choosing words carefully. I want to be clear that I don't regret asking you, or agreeing when you asked me, whichever version of events you prefer. Both are true, Lucas said. I asked. You met me halfway. Yes, and I don't regret it, but I also don't want this to interfere with the work. The rebrand is too important. To both of us. Exactly. She met his eyes. So Saturday is separate. Whatever happens or doesn't happen, Monday, we're back here, working on this project with the same expectations. Lucas nodded. Agreed. The work comes first. Until it's finished. Until it's finished, he confirmed. Then we reassess. Something settled between them. An understanding. They could hold both truths simultaneously, the professional commitment and the personal possibility. One didn't have to erase the other. They returned to the guidelines, and the rest of the meeting flowed with their usual productive friction. By 4:30, they'd resolved the remaining issues. Lucas packed his materials while Evelyn reviewed her notes. Same time next week? He asked. Actually, I'll be traveling next week. Portland meetings. But I'll review whatever you send, and we can discuss over email. Sounds good. Lucas was halfway to the door when Evelyn spoke again. Lucas? He turned. I'm looking forward to Saturday. Her voice was quieter, more personal than her usual crisp tone. Just so you know. Me too, he said. More than I probably should be. Probably. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. But we're doing it anyway. We are. The smile widened fractionally. See you then. Lucas left the building feeling like he'd just navigated a minefield successfully. The balance between professional and personal was delicate, but they'd managed it. For now. The next 2 days crawled by with excruciating slowness. Lucas threw himself into work, refining the mobile logo variations, developing the brand voice guidelines, creating mock-ups for various applications. But Saturday loomed large in his mind, a mix of anticipation and nerves he hadn't felt since he was 25, and asking Jennifer's father for permission to propose. Friday afternoon, his sister called. So Jennifer mentioned you have a date tomorrow, Melissa said, with the CEO. Lucas should have known Jennifer would tell her. They'd become friends during the marriage, stayed friends after. Yes, with Evelyn. The woman who stood you up was her assistant. Rachel, yeah, who panicked and didn't show. And then the CEO showed up instead and offered you a job. That's the summary. Lucas, this is either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or a terrible idea. I can't decide which. He laughed despite himself. Maybe both. Probably both. Melissa's tone shifted, becoming more serious. But honey, are you ready for this? Really ready. Because dating is complicated enough without adding professional entanglement and single parenthood, and my fear of getting hurt again, and all the baggage I've been carrying for 3 years, Lucas finished. I know. I've thought about all of it. And I'm doing it anyway. Because Melissa, I haven't felt this alive in so long. Working with her, it's like, he struggled to find words. It's like I forgot I could be good at something, really good, and she sees that. She pushes me to be better and trusts me to get there. That's professional respect, Lucas. That's different from romantic compatibility. I know the difference, and I think there might be both. Melissa sighed. Then I'm happy for you. Nervous, but happy. Just promise me you'll be careful with your heart. I will. And Lucas, if she hurts you, I get to slash her tires. That's not how that works. It's exactly how that works. Sister privilege. After they hung up, Lucas stood in his kitchen staring at the calendar on the refrigerator. Tomorrow night was circled in Emma's purple marker. She'd insisted on marking Daddy's special dinner after he'd told the kids he had plans. Tyler had been characteristically understated. Cool, don't be weird. Emma had peppered him with questions. Where are you going? What are you wearing? Is she nice? Will she like us? That last question had stopped Lucas cold. I don't know yet, baby. This is just a first date. We're getting to know each other. But if you like her and she likes you, then she'll want to meet us, right? The presumption of permanence in her 8-year-old logic was both touching and terrifying. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? Now, standing in his kitchen on Friday afternoon, Lucas felt the weight of that responsibility. He wasn't just dating for himself. Eventually, if this went anywhere, his kids would be involved. Evelyn would need to understand that his life came as a package deal. The thought should have been daunting. Instead, it felt clarifying. If Evelyn couldn't handle the reality of his life, better to know that now. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt intentional. Clear skies, temperatures in the mid-60s, cherry blossoms just starting to open on trees throughout the city. Lucas dropped the kids at Jennifer's at 4 o'clock. Emma hugged him extra tight. "You look handsome, Daddy." "Thanks, sweetheart." "Don't be nervous. Just be yourself." Lucas laughed. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't always notice." Tyler rolled his eyes, but then added quietly, "She's right, though. You're pretty cool when you're not trying too hard." The validation from his 11-year-old son landed with unexpected weight. Jennifer watched from the porch, smiling. "They're right. Go have fun, Lucas. You deserve this." The restaurant Evelyn had chosen was in the Pearl District, an upscale neighborhood of converted warehouses and modern condos. The place was called Tributary, known for innovative Pacific Northwest cuisine and an intimate atmosphere. Lucas arrived 10 minutes early and waited in his car, giving himself a final pep talk. "You're capable. You're interesting. You have value beyond being a single dad struggling to make ends meet." At 6:58, he walked inside. The hostess greeted him with a warm smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Hart, 7 o'clock. "Of course, Ms. Hart is already here. Right this way." His heart kicked up a notch as he followed her through the dining room. The space was smaller than Maria Verde, more intimate. Edison bulbs cast warm light over exposed brick. The tables were spaced far enough apart for privacy. And there, at a corner table, sat Evelyn. She looked different outside the context of conference rooms and business suits. She wore a deep emerald dress, simple but elegant, the color bringing out the gray in her eyes. Her hair was down for the first time Lucas had seen, dark waves falling past her shoulders. She was studying the wine list when he approached, and when she looked up, her expression shifted into something warm and genuine. "Lucas, you're exactly on time. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? With you, it's expected." She smiled. "Please, sit." He took the chair across from her, suddenly hyper-aware of every detail, the way candlelight caught her features, the subtle scent of her perfume, something with citrus and cedar, the fact that they were here together without the safety net of brand guidelines between them. "This is strange," he said. "Strange good or strange bad?" "I'm not sure yet." He smiled to show he was mostly kidding. "We've spent 6 weeks talking about logos and typography. I don't actually know how you take your coffee. Black? 2 sugars? You?" "Same, but no sugar." "That's very on brand for you." Lucas laughed. "Are we really going to talk about branding on our first date?" "It's comfortable territory." But Evelyn set down the wine list, folding her hands on the table. "But you're right. We should venture into uncomfortable territory. Isn't that the point?" "I think so, though I'm out of practice." "How long has it been since you dated?" 3 years, since before the divorce was finalized. You?" Evelyn considered the question. "Actually dated? 4 years? I've had occasional dinners with people, professional overlaps that someone thought might become personal. They didn't." "Why not?" "Because I'm difficult." She said it matter-of-factly, without apology. "I work constantly. I have high standards. I don't compromise easily. Most people find that exhausting." "I find it energizing," Lucas said honestly. Something flickered in her eyes. "Do you?" "You make me better at what I do. You push me to think harder, work smarter. That's not exhausting. That's exhilarating. But that's professional. Personal is different." "Is it, though?" Lucas leaned forward slightly. "I think the qualities that make you good at your work, the integrity, the high standards, the unwillingness to settle, those are the same qualities that would make you worth knowing personally." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. "You're very good at saying the right thing." "I'm saying the true thing. There's a difference." The server appeared, breaking the intensity. They ordered wine, a bottle of Pinot Noir that Evelyn recommended, and Lucas realized he was actually enjoying this. The nervousness hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something else, excitement, possibility. Tell me about your kids, Evelyn said after the wine arrived. I know their names, Emma and Tyler, 8 and 11, but beyond the basics. Lucas felt himself relax into familiar territory. Emma is pure energy and emotion. Everything is either the best thing ever or the worst tragedy imaginable. She feels everything intensely, makes friends instantly, wants to save every animal she sees. She sounds wonderful. She is exhausting, but wonderful. Tyler is quieter, more internal. He processes things slowly, carefully, doesn't trust easily. The divorce was harder on him, I think, or he just shows it less. That must be difficult, navigating their different needs. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most important. Lucas took a sip of wine. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together, like I'm one forgotten permission slip away from everything falling apart. But you don't fall apart. No, I don't get to. They need me to be stable, so I am. Evelyn nodded slowly. My father was like that. After my mother died, he just kept going, built his company, raised me, never let me see him struggle. How old were you? 12. Old enough to understand loss, young enough to need a parent who didn't fall apart. She traced the rim of her wine glass. I think I learned from him that strength means not showing weakness, that you handle things by working harder, building more, never stopping long enough to feel the pain. That's a lonely way to live. It is, Evelyn agreed quietly, but it's effective. Lucas heard the weight beneath her words, the cost of that effectiveness. Is that why you work so much? Why you push so hard? Partly, and partly because I genuinely love what I do. Building things, creating spaces that improve people's lives. There's meaning in that. There is. But Evelyn, he hesitated, then pushed forward. It's okay to want more than just work, to want connection, to let someone see you struggle sometimes. She met his eyes. Is that what you're offering, to see me struggle? I'm offering to see you, all of it, the strength and the struggle, the competence and the uncertainty, all the parts you usually keep separate. The server arrived with their first course, seared scallops for Evelyn, wild mushroom soup for Lucas. The interruption gave them both a moment to breathe. You're dangerous, Evelyn said after the server left. How so? You make me want to be honest, and I'm not usually comfortable with that. Neither am I, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the right person is the one who makes honesty feel less terrifying. They ate slowly, conversation flowing more easily now. Lucas talked about his path to design, the initial passion, the corporate years, the divorce that had forced him to rebuild everything. Evelyn talked about taking over Heart and Vale, the weight of her father's legacy, the loneliness of leadership. People treat you differently when you're the boss, she said. They're careful, deferential. They don't challenge you because they're afraid of consequences. I challenge you. You do, constantly. It's refreshing. She smiled, also occasionally infuriating. Good. You should be challenged. Everyone should. The main courses arrived, duck for her, halibut for him. The food was exceptional, but Lucas barely noticed. He was too focused on the woman across from him, on the way she opened up incrementally, sharing pieces of herself like valuable artifacts she'd kept locked away. Can I ask you something potentially invasive? Evelyn said as they neared the end of the meal. Sure. Your ex-wife, are you over her? Lucas appreciated the directness. Yes and no. I'm over the marriage. Over the hope that we could make it work. We weren't right for each other, not in the ways that matter for a partnership. But she's the mother of my kids. She's woven into my life permanently. I'll always care about her well-being. That's mature. That's realistic. We failed as spouses. We're decent as co-parents. That's enough. Evelyn nodded. I've never been married. Came close once, in my early 30s. But I chose the company instead. Looking back, it was the right choice. We would have made each other miserable. Do you regret it? Not marrying him? No. But I regret the binary thinking, like it had to be career or relationship, like I couldn't have both. And now? Now I'm 44 years old, successful by most metrics, lonely by others. She held his gaze. and sitting across from a man who makes me reconsider what might be possible. Lucas felt his breath catch. That's a lot of pressure. Is it? Or is it just honesty? Both, maybe. Evelyn smiled. I told you I don't do casual. If this is going to be something, I'd rather know now. Save us both time. What do you want it to be? I want to see where it goes. I want to have more dinners like this. I want to integrate the professional respect we have with personal connection and see if they can coexist. I want... She paused, vulnerability crossing her features. I want to try. With you. If you're willing. Lucas reached across the table, covering her hand with his. It was the first time they'd touched outside of professional handshakes, and the contact sent electricity through him. I'm willing, he said, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. My kids come first, always. If Emma has a nightmare at midnight, I'm leaving wherever I am. If Tyler needs help with something, that takes priority. My life is complicated and messy, and there's no space in it for someone who needs me to be available on demand. I don't need you on demand. I need you honest, present when you're present, communicating when you can't be. I can do that. Then we try. Evelyn turned her hand under his, lacing their fingers together. Carefully, honestly, with all the complications that come with it. They stayed like that for a moment, hands linked across the table, the restaurant humming around them with other people's conversations and private celebrations. The server approached with dessert menus, and they reluctantly separated. Should we? Lucas asked. Share something? If you want. They ordered chocolate soufflé, and when it arrived, they ate from the same plate, spoons occasionally clinking together. The intimacy of it felt significant, a small thing that represented larger trust. I have a confession, Evelyn said, setting down her spoon. What's that? I knew Rachel wasn't going to show up that night. She called me 3 hours before, panicking. I could have texted you, could have had her text you. Lucas processed this. But you came instead. I came instead. Because she'd been talking about you for weeks. Because I'd seen your work and was impressed. And because... She hesitated. Because some part of me wanted to meet you myself. See if the person behind the work was as interesting as the work itself. And? You were more interesting. You sat there alone, eating your dinner with dignity. Not angry, not bitter, just present with what was happening. That told me everything I needed to know about your character. Lucas shook his head slowly. So this whole thing, the job offer, the rebrand, all of it, that was partly because you were interested? The job offer was legitimate. Your work is exceptional. I would have hired you regardless. But did I structure the timeline to give us more interaction? Did I insist on twice-weekly meetings instead of weekly? Did I personally review every detail instead of delegating to Margaret? Evelyn smiled slightly. Yes, I did all of that. That's manipulative. That's strategic. There's a difference. Is there? I didn't deceive you. I didn't misrepresent the work. I just created opportunities for us to collaborate more closely, to see if the connection I suspected might exist actually did. Lucas sat back, trying to decide how he felt about this. Part of him wanted to be annoyed, at the calculated nature of it, at the way she'd orchestrated things. But another part appreciated the honesty of her confession, the fact that she was telling him now instead of letting him believe it had all been organic. I don't know whether to be flattered or concerned, he said finally. Be both. I am. That surprised a laugh out of him. You're concerned about yourself? I'm concerned about what I'm capable of when I want something. Evelyn's expression was serious. I built a company through force of will and strategic thinking. I'm very good at identifying what I want and creating paths to get it. But people aren't companies. Relationships can't be optimized like business processes. No, they can't. So I'm trying to find the balance between my natural tendencies and what a relationship actually requires. And I don't know if I'm capable of that, but I want to try. The vulnerability in her admission struck Lucas deeply. This powerful, controlled woman confessing uncertainty, admitting that she didn't have all the answers. Then we figure it out together, he said. Neither of us knows what we're doing. We just try, honestly, and adjust as we go. Evelyn nodded slowly. I can work with that. They finished dessert, and Lucas paid despite Evelyn's protests. You got dessert at Maria Verde. This one's mine. Outside, the evening had turned cool, stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to end the night. "I parked 2 blocks that way," Lucas said, pointing north. "I'm 3 blocks south. So this is good night." "It is." But Evelyn didn't move away. Lucas stepped closer, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. She didn't. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair back from her face, and she leaned into the touch fractionally. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "I was hoping you would." He kissed her carefully at first, a question more than a statement. But when she responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, the kiss deepened. It was everything Lucas hadn't let himself imagine over the past 6 weeks. Connection and chemistry and the promise of more. When they finally separated, Evelyn looked slightly dazed. "Well," she said, "yeah. It was." She smiled, touching her fingers to her lips. "I should go." "You should." But neither of them moved for another moment, standing close on the sidewalk while the city moved around them. Finally, Evelyn stepped back. "Monday? Email. We'll figure out next steps for the rebrand." "Monday," Lucas confirmed. "And Evelyn?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For tonight, for the honesty. For taking the risk. Thank you for being worth the risk." She squeezed his hand once, then turned and walked south, heels clicking against concrete. Lucas watched until she disappeared around the corner, then headed to his car, feeling like the world had reorganized itself into new configurations. His phone buzzed as he drove home. A text from Evelyn. "I'm already second-guessing everything I said. This is normal, right?" He smiled and texted back at a red light. "Completely normal. I'm doing the same thing." "Good. Wanted to make sure we're equally terrified." "Equally terrified. Equally hopeful." A pause, then, "Yes, that too. Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Evelyn." At Jennifer's house, both kids were still awake despite the late hour. Emma rushed to the door when he rang. "How was it? Did you have fun? Did you kiss her?" "Emma!" But Jennifer laughed from the living room. "Let the man breathe, Em." Lucas scooped his daughter up. "It was nice. We had dinner. We talked. That's all you need to know." "But did you like her?" He met Jennifer's eyes over Emma's head. His ex-wife was smiling, genuinely happy for him. "Yeah, baby, I liked her." Emma squealed and hugged him tighter. Tyler appeared in the doorway, trying to look disinterested but clearly curious. "Was it weird?" his son asked. "A little, but good weird." Tyler nodded, processing. "Cool." On the drive home, Emma chattered about her evening with Jennifer and her stepdad, while Tyler plugged into his headphones. Lucas let his daughter's voice wash over him, grounding him back in the reality of his life. This was his foundation, his kids, his responsibilities. Everything else had to fit around that. But as he pulled into his driveway and shepherded sleepy children toward bed, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope that his life could be more than just competent single parenting and scrape-together freelance work. Hope that he deserved connection and partnership and someone who saw him, really saw him, and chose him anyway. Hope that Evelyn Hart, with her gray eyes and uncompromising standards and carefully guarded vulnerability, might be exactly the person he'd been unknowingly waiting for. After the kids were finally asleep, Lucas stood in his kitchen with a cup of tea, looking at his reflection in the dark window. The man staring back looked different than he had 2 months ago. More alive, more present, less resigned to a life of quiet limitation. His phone buzzed one more time. "Evelyn, I can't sleep. Keep thinking about tonight. About you." "This is going to complicate everything, isn't it?" Lucas typed back. "Probably. Worth it, though." "How do you know?" "I don't. Not for certain, but sometimes you have to risk complicated for a chance at something real." A longer pause this time. Then, "You're right. Good night for real this time." "Good night for real." Lucas set down his phone and smiled at his reflection. Complicated was fine. He'd been living with complicated for 3 years. At least now it was complicated with possibility woven through it. And that made all the difference. The weeks after their first date unfolded with a careful choreography neither of them had planned, but both seemed to understand instinctively. They maintained professional boundaries during work hours. Emails remained crisp and focused. Thursday meetings continued with the same productive intensity, but evenings became something else entirely. Dinner twice a week when Lucas could arrange childcare. Long phone conversations after the kids went to bed. Text messages that started about brand specifications and drifted into personal territory. The mobile logo needs more refinement, Evelyn wrote one Tuesday night. Lucas responded, I'll send revisions tomorrow. How was Portland? Exhausting. Good meetings, but I missed home. Missed a pause that Lucas could feel even through text. Then, missed talking to you. He smiled at his phone, sitting at his kitchen table while Tyler did homework across from him. I missed that too. Want to talk now? His phone rang 30 seconds later. Hi, Evelyn said, and Lucas could hear the smile in her voice. Hi yourself, Tyler. Headphones, please. His son rolled his eyes but complied, plugging into his music while Lucas stepped into the living room for privacy. Is this a bad time? Evelyn asked. No, homework supervision doesn't require my full attention. Lucas settled onto the couch. Tell me about Portland. They talked for 40 minutes, about her meetings, about the new market expansion, about the architect she'd met who reminded her of the young woman she'd mentioned their first night at Maria Verde, about small things and large things, and the comfortable space between. I should let you go, Evelyn said eventually. You have dad duties. I do, but Evelyn, I'm glad you called. Me too. Good night, Lucas. These rhythms established themselves naturally over April and into early May. The rebrand progressed toward completion. The relationship progressed toward something neither of them named, but both felt deepening. And then came the Thursday when everything shifted again. Lucas arrived for their regular meeting to find Evelyn waiting in conference room C with an expression he couldn't quite read. The partners approved everything, she said, before he could even set down his portfolio case. Full implementation starting next month, marketing rollout in June, new website launch in July. Pride surged through Lucas. That's incredible. Wow. It is. You should be proud. This is exceptional work. But her tone carried something underneath the professional praise. Which brings me to something we need to discuss. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. Okay. Evelyn stood, walking to the window, her tell when she was working through something difficult. The rebrand is essentially complete. You'll do implementation support over the next few months, but the creative work is done, which means our professional relationship is transitioning. Right. We knew that was coming. We did. But Lucas, I need to know. She turned to face him. What happens now? With us? The question hung in the air between them. They'd been carefully avoiding it, focusing on the present moment rather than future implications. Lucas set down his things and moved to stand near her, not touching but close enough to feel the pull between them. What do you want to happen? That's not an answer. No, it's a question, because this has to work for both of us, for all of us. He thought about Emma and Tyler, about the careful ecosystem of his life. I need to know if you're ready for what comes next. Which is meeting my kids, being part of my actual life, not just the evening phone calls and scheduled dinners. Because Evelyn, I can't do casual. I told you that. If we keep going forward, eventually it becomes real, integrated, complicated in ways we haven't dealt with yet. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that, about what it means to be with someone who has children, who has an ex-wife and custody schedules and responsibilities I don't understand. Lucas felt his chest constrict. Here it came, the reasonable retreat. The acknowledgement that this was too much, too complicated, too different from her controlled life. And I'm terrified, Evelyn continued, because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone whose first priority is always going to be someone else, to someone else's. They have to be my first priority. I know. And that's what I've been working through, whether I can be okay with that, whether I can build a relationship where I'm not the center. She met his eyes. And Lucas, I think I can. I think I want to. But I need you to be patient while I learn how. Relief and something deeper flooded through him. You want to meet them? I want to try. If you think it's the right time. Lucas thought about Emma's questions, about Tyler's careful assessment of anything new in their lives, about the weight of introducing someone to the most important people in his world. It's terrifying, he admitted, for both of us. They might not like you. They might not. And if they don't, if this doesn't work, then we deal with it honestly. Evelyn stepped closer, taking his hand. But we try, because I don't want to look back and wonder what might have been if I'd been brave enough. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling the solid reality of her against him. Okay, we try. They stood like that for a moment before Evelyn pulled back slightly, a small smile playing at her lips. I should warn you, I'm terrible with children. You can't be worse than you think you are. I don't know what to talk to them about. I don't know what 8-year-olds or 11-year-olds care about. Lucas laughed. Just be yourself. Be honest. They're good at detecting bullshit. Wonderful. No pressure. They planned it for Saturday. A casual lunch, neutral territory, low stakes. Lucas told the kids Thursday night over dinner. I want you to meet someone this weekend, he said, trying to sound casual while his heart hammered. Her name is Evelyn. She's someone I've been spending time with. Emma's eyes went wide. Your work lady? The pretty one? Yes, her. Tyler looked up from his pasta. Like a girlfriend? Like someone I'm dating, someone who's becoming important to me. Is she nice? Emma asked. She is, but different nice than you might expect. She's very smart and very direct. She doesn't do a lot of small talk. Tyler processed this. So basically she's like you, but as a girl. Lucas blinked. That's actually pretty accurate. Will she like us? Emma's voice had gone small, uncertain. Lucas reached across the table, taking her hand. Baby, anyone who's going to be part of my life has to appreciate how amazing you two are. If she doesn't see that, then she's not the right person. Okay? Okay, but Dad, Emma squeezed his hand, what if we don't like her? The question struck at the heart of Lucas's deepest fear. Then we talk about it, honestly, and figure out what that means. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that felt almost mocking. Lucas was up early, helping Emma pick an outfit. She changed 4 times before settling on jeans and her favorite purple shirt. Tyler pretended not to care, but Lucas noticed he'd actually combed his hair without being asked. You guys know this is just lunch, right? Just meeting someone. No big deal. Then why do you look nervous? Tyler asked. Because she's important to me. And you're important to me. And I want those worlds to fit together. Emma hugged him tight. They will, Daddy. I have a good feeling. Lucas wished he shared her certainty. They met at a family-friendly restaurant near the waterfront, casual enough to feel low pressure, nice enough to show he'd put thought into it. Lucas spotted Evelyn waiting outside and felt his pulse quicken. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, the most casual he'd seen her, but still carried herself with that distinctive poise. When she saw them approaching, something crossed her face. Nervousness, determination, hope. Evelyn, these are my kids, Emma and Tyler. He put his hands on their shoulders. Guys, this is Evelyn. Evelyn crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to Emma's eye level. Hi, Emma. I've heard a lot about you. Your dad says you're quite the artist. Emma beamed. I like drawing. Do you like drawing? I'm terrible at it, actually, but I love looking at art. Maybe you could show me some of your work sometime? Really? I have some in Dad's car. Easy, Em, Lucas said. Let's eat first. Inside, they settled into a booth, Lucas and Tyler on one side, Evelyn and Emma on the other. The first few minutes were awkward, everyone too careful, too aware of the significance. But then Emma started talking, because Emma could never stay quiet for long, and the conversation found its footing. Dad says you build buildings, Emma said, swinging her legs under the table. I do. Well, my company does. We work with architects and contractors to create spaces where people live and work. That's cool. Do you build houses? Sometimes. Mostly we build apartment buildings and offices, places where lots of people spend time. Tyler had been quiet, observing with his careful, analytical gaze. Dad showed us the logo he made for your company. It's good. It is, Evelyn agreed. Your dad is exceptionally talented. He sees things other people miss. Tyler nodded slowly. Yeah, he's pretty good at that. The praise for Lucas seemed to lower some of Tyler's defenses. He asked questions about the biggest building Hart and Vale had done, about whether Evelyn had ever been on a construction site, about what happens when things go wrong. Evelyn answered honestly, never talking down to him, treating his questions as legitimate inquiries worth thoughtful responses. Emma, meanwhile, had produced a small sketchpad from her backpack and was drawing while periodically looking up at Evelyn. "What are you drawing, baby?" Lucas asked. "A surprise. You'll see." Lunch arrived and conversation flowed more easily. Evelyn asked about school, about soccer, about Tyler's interests beyond what Lucas had mentioned. She listened, really listened, in that same focused way she brought to business meetings. "I don't really know how to do this," Evelyn admitted at one point, her honesty startling and refreshing. "I've never spent much time around kids, so if I'm being weird or awkward, just tell me." Emma giggled. "You're not weird, you're nice." "Though you do sit really straight," Tyler observed, "like you're in a business meeting." Evelyn looked surprised, then laughed, a real laugh that Lucas had heard maybe twice before. "You're right, I do. Occupational hazard." She deliberately slouched slightly. "Better?" "Worse," Tyler said with a small smile. "You look uncomfortable now." "I am uncomfortable, but I'm trying." "Why?" Tyler's question was direct, assessing. "Because your dad is important to me, which means you're important to me, so I want to make an effort." Tyler considered this, then nodded. "Okay, that's fair." It was, Lucas realized, his son's version of approval. After lunch, they walked along the waterfront. Emma held Lucas's hand on one side and, after a moment's hesitation, reached for Evelyn's on the other. Lucas saw Evelyn's surprise at the gesture, the careful way she held Emma's small hand, the slight smile that suggested she was more moved than she'd expected to be. Tyler walked slightly ahead, occasionally looking back to make sure they were following, maintaining his preteen independence while staying within the family orbit. "There's ice cream," Emma announced, pointing to a vendor. Lucas started to say they'd just eaten, but Evelyn spoke first. "I think ice cream sounds perfect. My treat." They sat on a bench overlooking the water, eating ice cream while seagulls circled overhead. Emma showed Evelyn her drawing, stick figures labeled Dad, Emma, Tyler, and one labeled Evelyn, with carefully drawn dark hair. "We're all holding hands," Emma explained, "because that's what families do." The word family hit Lucas like a wave. Too soon, too presumptuous. He started to intervene, to explain that this was just getting to know each other, but Evelyn spoke first. "That's a beautiful drawing, Emma. Thank you for including me." Her voice was gentle, careful. "Though I should tell you, I don't know if I'll be part of your family. Your dad and I are still figuring out if this works for all of us. Does that make sense?" Emma nodded seriously. "Yeah, like a trial period. We do that in soccer before they put you on the real team." "Exactly like that." "Okay. But I think you'll make the team." Emma returned to her ice cream with the matter-of-fact confidence of childhood. Tyler was quieter, but as they walked back to the parking lot, he fell into step beside Evelyn. "Are you going to make my dad sad?" he asked bluntly. Evelyn stopped walking, crouching down to Tyler's level. Lucas started to intervene, but she held up a hand. "I'm going to try very hard not to," Evelyn said seriously. "But Tyler, I can't promise I won't. People hurt each other sometimes, even when they don't mean to. What I can promise is that I'll be honest with him, and with you, and that if this doesn't work out, it'll be because we tried our best and it just wasn't right. Not because I didn't care." Tyler studied her for a long moment. "Dad really likes you. I really like him too. He hasn't liked anyone since Mom, so this is kind of a big deal." "I know. It's a big deal for me too." Tyler nodded slowly. "Okay, just don't hurt him. He acts tough, but he's actually pretty sensitive." "I'll remember that." At the cars, Emma hugged Evelyn goodbye with her characteristic enthusiasm. Tyler offered a handshake that Evelyn accepted with appropriate seriousness. After the kids were in Lucas's car, Evelyn lingered. "How did I do?" she asked quietly. "You were perfect, honest, kind. You didn't try to be someone you're not." Emma called us a family. "I know. I'm sorry if that was—" "Don't apologize. It was sweet and terrifying and made me want to live up to it." Evelyn stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Lucas, I meant what I told Tyler. I can't promise this will work. I can't promise I won't mess up, but I want to try, really try." Lucas kissed her softly, aware of his kids watching from the car. That's all I'm asking, for both of us to try. The following weeks found their new rhythm. Evelyn came to one of Emma's soccer games, standing on the sideline beside Lucas, cheering with appropriate enthusiasm when Emma scored. She joined them for dinner one evening, helping Tyler with a math problem that had been frustrating him for days. Her analytical mind breaking it down in ways that finally made sense. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, times when Evelyn's natural directness clashed with the emotional chaos of parenting. Times when Lucas's kids demanded attention that meant canceling plans. Times when they both wondered if they were forcing something that didn't quite fit. But there were also moments of unexpected grace, like the evening Evelyn showed up at Lucas's house unannounced with a box of pastries and no agenda, settling at the kitchen table to work on her laptop while Lucas helped with homework and made dinner. The comfortable domesticity of it, her presence woven into the fabric of their evening rather than being a separate special event. Or the Saturday when Tyler asked if Evelyn could come to his robotics competition, and the way her face lit up with genuine pleasure at being included. Or the night Emma had a nightmare and came padding into the living room where Lucas and Evelyn were watching a movie, climbing onto Lucas's lap, and then, after a moment's hesitation, reaching out to hold Evelyn's hand too. "You're good at this," Lucas told Evelyn one evening after the kids had gone to bed, and she was preparing to leave. "At what?" "At being part of this. Of us. I know it's not what you're used to." Evelyn was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "It's not what I'm used to, but it's teaching me things I didn't know I needed to learn. About flexibility, about letting go of control, about how love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies." "That's very poetic for someone who claims to be all logic." She smiled. "You're a bad influence." "Good." He kissed her at the door, and when she pulled back, there was something different in her expression. Something settled. "I love you," she said simply. "I've been trying to figure out when to say it, how to say it, but that's just complicating something that's actually quite simple. I love you, Lucas Bennett. You and your chaos and your beautiful children and the life you've built." Lucas felt his throat tighten. "I love you too. Have for weeks, but was waiting for the right moment." "There is no right moment, there's just honesty." "Then honestly, I love you, and I want to build something with you, something that works for all of us. Even though it's complicated?" "Especially because it's complicated, because you show up for the complicated parts. That's how I know it's real." In June, the rebrand launched publicly. Press coverage was positive. New client inquiries flooded in. The Heart and Veil team celebrated with champagne in the main conference room, and Lucas was there, not as a contractor anymore, but as Evelyn's partner in every sense that mattered. Margaret Wells approached him during the celebration. "You did exceptional work. We're lucky to have found you." "Thank you. That means a lot." "And Lucas?" Margaret's expression was knowing. "Thank you for making Evelyn happy. I've worked with her for 8 years. I've never seen her like this." After the celebration, after the team had dispersed and the office had quieted, Lucas and Evelyn stood in conference room C, the place where so much had unfolded between them. "Remember the first time we met here?" Lucas asked. "You were terrified. Trying to hide it, but terrified." "I was. You were so intimidating." "Was?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Are. Present tense. Still intimidating, but also kind, and vulnerable, and willing to try things that scare you." She moved into his arms, resting her head against his chest. "I almost didn't come that night. To Maria Verde, Rachel called me panicking, and I almost just texted you an apology." "What changed your mind?" "Something she said. That she'd never met anyone who saw the world the way you did, who built things from truth instead of trends, and I thought, I want to meet someone like that. I want to know what that looks like." And you were sitting alone at that table eating pasta with quiet dignity, and I knew you were someone worth knowing, worth the risk. Lucas kissed the top of her head. "Best failed date of my life." "Mine too." They stood like that, holding each other in the empty conference room while the city lights glowed through the windows. Two people who'd found each other in the least likely circumstances, who'd built something meaningful through honesty and effort and the willingness to try. "What happens now?" Lucas asked. "Now we keep building, keep trying, keep showing up for each other and for your kids and for all the complicated, beautiful, messy parts of life." "That sounds perfect." It sounds terrifying. That too. Evelyn pulled back to look at him. I never thought I'd have this. A relationship that felt like partnership. Someone who challenged me and supported me and made me want to be better. Neither did I. After the divorce, I convinced myself I was fine alone, that I didn't need this. And now? Now I know the difference between fine and happy, between surviving and thriving. You showed me that difference. We showed each other. Summer unfolded with the easy warmth that had eluded Lucas for so long. Weekend trips to the coast with the kids, evenings in his backyard while Emma chased fireflies and Tyler read under the porch light. Evelyn integrated into their lives not by replacing anything but by adding dimension, another adult to share decisions with, another perspective to consider, another person to love and be loved by. One evening in late July, Lucas found Emma drawing at the kitchen table while Evelyn worked on her laptop nearby. "What are you working on, baby?" Emma held up her picture, a house with 4 stick figures in front. The drawing was more sophisticated than her earlier attempts, the figures more detailed. "That's our family," she said. "You, me, Tyler, and Evelyn." Lucas glanced at Evelyn, who'd looked up from her work. They hadn't talked explicitly about what they were building, about labels or definitions or futures, but Emma had defined it in her child's clarity. "Is that okay?" Emma asked, suddenly uncertain. "That I drew Evelyn as family?" Evelyn set down her laptop and moved to kneel beside Emma's chair. "Can I tell you something?" Emma nodded. "I didn't grow up with brothers or sisters. My mom died when I was young. It was just me and my dad, and he worked a lot. So I never really had a family like this, loud and messy and full of people who care about each other." Her voice was steady, but Lucas heard the emotion underneath. "Being included in your family, even in a drawing, means more to me than you might understand." Emma hugged her, and Lucas saw Evelyn's eyes close, her arms coming around his daughter with careful tenderness. "You can be in all my drawings," Emma declared, "because you're ours now." Tyler appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene. "Are we doing feelings?" "Because I'm out." But he was smiling, and when Evelyn reached out, he allowed himself to be pulled into the hug too. Lucas stood watching his family, because that's what they'd become, slowly and imperfectly and beautifully, and felt something settle deep in his chest. This was what he'd been building toward without knowing it. Not a return to what he'd lost, but something entirely new, something better, because it was built on honesty and choice and the daily decision to show up for each other. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Lucas and Evelyn sat on his back porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Move in with me," Lucas said. Evelyn turned to look at him. "What?" "Not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually, when it feels right. Move in with us. Be part of this family officially." "Lucas, that's terrifying, I know, but we've been terrified before and it's worked out pretty well." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "I'd want to do it right. Not rush. Make sure the kids are ready. Make sure we're ready." "Of course." "And I'd need my own space, a home office, somewhere I can work without disrupting everyone." "We'll figure it out." "And Lucas? I've never lived with anyone. Never shared space like that. I might be terrible at it." "You probably will be. I'll probably be terrible at it too. We'll be terrible together and adjust as we go." She laughed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "When you put it that way, is that a yes?" "It's a let's work toward it. Let's talk to the kids. Make sure everyone's comfortable. Do this thoughtfully." "I can work with thoughtful." They sat in comfortable silence, and Lucas thought about the journey that had led here. From that empty chair at Maria Verde to this moment on his back porch with this remarkable woman beside him. "I was so angry that night," he said quietly. "When Rachel didn't show up, I felt pathetic sitting there alone. But you stayed. I stayed. And you came. And everything changed. For both of us." Evelyn laced her fingers through his. "I spent so long thinking I didn't need this. That work was enough. That I could build a meaningful life without partnership or family or any of that messy emotional stuff. And now? Now I know I was wrong. Work is meaningful, but this..." She gestured to the house behind them, where his kids slept. "This is what makes life worth living. The messy, complicated, beautiful chaos of people loving each other, Lucas kissed her softly. I'm glad you figured that out. I'm glad you showed me. Fall arrived with its usual flourish of color. The Heart and Veil rebrand was considered a major success, leading to 3 new major contracts and industry recognition. Lucas's freelance practice was thriving, his reputation rebuilding with the kind of momentum he'd lost years ago. But more than professional success, Lucas had found something he'd stopped believing in. A partner who challenged him and supported him in equal measure. A woman who loved his children and whom his children loved in return. A future that looked different than what he'd imagined, but better for its unexpected shape. One Saturday in October, Lucas and Evelyn drove the kids up to the mountains to see the fall colors. Emma chattered constantly, pointing out every particularly brilliant tree. Tyler plugged into his music but occasionally contributed observations. Evelyn drove while Lucas navigated, their hands linked on the console between them. It was ordinary, unremarkable. The kind of family outing that happened thousands of times every weekend, and it was perfect. That evening, sitting around a campfire at a state park, roasting marshmallows and telling stories, Emma turned to Lucas with that serious expression she got when she was thinking deeply about something. Dad, remember when you went on that date and the lady didn't show up? I remember. I'm glad she didn't show up, because if she had, we wouldn't have Evelyn. Tyler nodded agreement. Yeah, it worked out better this way. Evelyn looked at Lucas across the fire, her gray eyes reflecting firelight, and smiled that smile he'd come to know so well, the one that said she was happy and surprised by her happiness in equal measure. Yeah, Lucas agreed, pulling Emma close. It worked out exactly right. Later, after the kids had fallen asleep in the tent and Lucas and Evelyn sat alone by the dying fire, she leaned against him with a contented sigh. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For staying that night. For not leaving when it would have been easier. For giving me the chance to find you. Thank you for showing up. For seeing something worth pursuing. For being brave enough to try. We're quite the pair, Evelyn said. Both terrified. Both trying anyway. That's love, though, isn't it? Being scared but showing up anyway. Choosing each other even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated. They sat in comfortable silence, watching embers drift upward into the star-filled sky. Somewhere in the tent behind them, Emma murmured in her sleep. A night bird called from the trees. The world continued its ancient rhythms, indifferent to human joy or sorrow. But here, in this moment, Lucas felt complete in a way he'd forgotten was possible. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Not because there wouldn't be challenges ahead. There would be. But because he'd found someone willing to face those challenges beside him. Someone who chose him and his complicated life deliberately, with full knowledge of what she was signing up for. I love you, he said. I love you too. Evelyn turned to kiss him softly. And your kids, and this chaotic, beautiful life we're building together. Even when it's messy? Especially when it's messy, because messy means real, messy means alive. They stayed like that until the fire burned down to coals, holding each other under a canopy of stars, 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and decided to build something lasting. The next morning, they packed up camp and drove home through brilliant autumn sunshine. Emma sang off-key to the radio. Tyler dozed in the back seat. Evelyn and Lucas traded observations about the landscape, about nothing and everything, with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. When they pulled into Lucas's driveway, Emma unbuckled immediately. Can Evelyn stay for dinner? Lucas looked at Evelyn, who smiled. I'd like that, if that's okay. More than okay. Inside, they made dinner together, Lucas and Evelyn working side by side in the kitchen while the kids set the table and argued good-naturedly about whose turn it was to pick the music. It was domestic and ordinary and exactly what Lucas had been missing without knowing it. After dinner, after dishes and homework and the usual evening routine, after the kids were finally in bed and Evelyn was preparing to leave, Lucas walked her to her car. I've been thinking about your offer, she said. About moving in. And I think we should start planning for it. Talk to the kids officially, figure out logistics, do it right. Joy surged through Lucas. Really? Really? I want this, Lucas. I want us. All the chaos and complication and beauty of it. He kissed her there in his driveway, under the streetlight, with the same intensity he'd felt that first night outside Tributary, but this kiss carried more weight, more certainty, more future. "When?" he asked when they separated. "After the holidays? Give the kids time to adjust to the idea, give us time to plan properly." "That sounds perfect." Evelyn traced his jaw with her fingers. "You know what's funny? I spent 44 years convinced I didn't need this, that I was complete on my own. And now? Now I know I was complete. But this, us, makes me better, fuller, more myself than I've ever been. That's how I feel too, like I was okay alone. But with you, I'm more than okay. I'm happy." They stood together in the quiet night, and Lucas thought about that Friday evening 4 months ago when he'd almost turned the car around in the parking lot of Marea Verde, when he'd been so certain that showing up was just inviting disappointment. He'd been wrong. Showing up had changed everything, because Evelyn had shown up too, had seen something worth pursuing in that empty chair and the man sitting alone, had chosen to take a risk on possibility instead of retreating to safety. And from that unlikely beginning, from a failed blind date and an empty chair and a CEO who refused to leave loose ends unresolved, they'd built something real, something lasting, something that felt like coming home. "Good night," Evelyn said, kissing him once more. "I love you." "I love you too. Drive safe." He watched her car disappear down the street, then turned back to his house, the lights warm in the windows, his children sleeping peacefully inside, his life full in ways he'd stopped believing possible. Lucas stood on his front porch for a moment, breathing in the cool October air, feeling gratitude settle into his bones. Life hadn't gone according to plan. The divorce had shattered his carefully constructed future. The lean freelance years had tested his resolve. The loneliness had sometimes felt insurmountable. But from those ashes, he'd built something better, something more honest, something more himself. And he'd found someone willing to build alongside him, someone who challenged him and supported him and loved his children as her own, someone who'd walked through a restaurant door and changed the trajectory of his entire life. Inside, Emma had left another drawing on the refrigerator, 4 stick figures holding hands under a sun that was, as always, slightly crooked. But this time, she'd added a caption in her careful purple marker, "Our happy family." Lucas smiled, touching the paper gently. She was right, they were happy. Imperfectly, complicatedly, beautifully happy. And it had all started with an empty chair and a man brave enough to stay when leaving would have been easier. Sometimes the wrong date leads you exactly where you were meant to be. Sometimes disappointment is just the universe rearranging itself into better configurations. Sometimes showing up changes everything. Lucas turned off the downstairs lights and headed to bed, his heart full, his life full, his future stretching ahead with promise and possibility. And somewhere across the city, Evelyn was driving home with the same sense of completion, the same quiet joy, the same gratitude for that Friday night when everything had shifted. 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds. 2 people who'd chosen each other deliberately, with full knowledge of what they were building. 2 people who'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when plans fall apart and something unexpected takes their place. The story that began with an empty chair had become a story of fullness, of family, of love that grew from honesty and effort and the daily decision to show up for each other. And that, Lucas thought as he drifted towards sleep, was exactly how it was supposed to be.